Racist cops corner black woman. Then her military dog turns the tables. The flashlight beam hit her square in the eyes. Hands where I can see them. Jada Monroe froze mid-step, one hand wrapped around Bravo's leash, the other raised slowly in the humid Georgia night. Her military-trained German shepherd let out a low, steady growl, not aggressive, but warning. Across the street, under the flickering street lamp, two sheriff's deputies stormed toward her, guns unholstered, breath fogging in the night air. "What's in the bag?" barked Deputy Rick Slater, a thick-necked white man in his late 40s, already flushed with aggression. "It's dog treats," Jada answered calmly, voice even. "I'm just walking my dog." "In this neighborhood? At this hour?" The second cop, Officer Chad Monroe, ironically sharing her last name, gave a mocking snort. "You casing houses or something?" "I'm renting that home right there, 231 Maple," she motioned with her chin. "Check your records." Rick stepped closer, eyes narrowed. "You got ID?" "No," she replied, unfazed. "I didn't think I'd need it to walk my dog." Wrong answer. In a flash, Rick lunged forward. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Before his hand even reached her wrist, Bravo moved. In a blur of disciplined motion, he stepped between them, planted firm, hackles rising, ears pinned. His growl deepened, not frenzied, but controlled. A trained protector. Rick's hand froze in midair. For a second, he looked stunned, as if realizing he wasn't dealing with just another civilian. "Control your damn mutt." "Bravo, stay," Jada said softly. The dog didn't move, but he didn't back down either. A tense silence hung in the air like a drawn bowstring. "Backup's on the way," Chad muttered into his radio. Jada didn't flinch. She looked straight at Rick and said, "You're escalating a situation that never should have existed." "Is that a threat?" Rick snapped. "No," she said. "It's a fact." Then came the twist. A voice crackled over the deputy's shoulder radio. "Be advised, that woman has no active warrants. House lease checks out. Her name is Jada Monroe. Rental started 2 days ago. Dogs registered. Nothing suspicious." Rick's face fell for a flicker of a second, then tightened with resentment. He wasn't ready to back down. Not in front of his partner, not in front of the woman who hadn't even raised her voice. Chad stepped up beside him. "Let's just take her in for obstructing," he muttered, but even he sounded unsure. Bravo gave a single sharp bark, just one. Both deputies flinched. Jada didn't move. "He's trained to react only if I'm in danger. So ask yourself, what kind of training do you think that is?" They didn't answer, but the backup did arrive. 2 more units, tires screeching, lights blaring across the quiet street. Neighbors began peeking out of windows, cameras in hand. A rookie officer stepped out of the patrol car, blinked, then walked over with a cautious air. "Lieutenant," she asked quietly, Is that you?" Jada's eyes locked on hers. It was Maria Sanchez, a former military policewoman she once supervised during a deployment in Germany. The recognition hit both of them hard. Maria's lips parted, but she quickly recovered. "What's going on here?" She refused to identify herself. "Walking around looking suspicious," Rick snapped. "She's a former Army commander, K-9 Division. I think you might have made a mistake." Rick turned red. "She didn't say any of that?" "Because I didn't have to," Jada said coolly. "And I still don't." Maria turned to her. "Ma'am, do you want to press any charges?" Jada's voice was calm. "Not yet. But I'm documenting everything." And with that, she walked away, Bravo trotting loyally at her side, tail high. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she faded into the shadows of the neighborhood she just moved into. Inside her home, Jada removed Bravo's harness and knelt beside him. "Good job, soldier." The dog rested his massive head against her knee. She ran a hand down his spine, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside was her military ID, expired, discreet, untraceable in civilian systems. She didn't intend to use it unless she had to. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "They're not done. Watch your six." Jada's jaw tensed. This wasn't just small-town racism anymore. Someone knew who she really was, and someone else clearly wanted her silenced. She glanced at Bravo. "Looks like we won't get much rest here either." The dog let out a soft huff, almost like agreement. In the stillness, she sat alone, listening to the faint hum of police radios still buzzing outside. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. It had only just begun. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of Jada's living room, but peace hadn't come with it. The night's incident still pulsed under her skin like a slow-burning fuse. She stood in the kitchen, a mug of black coffee warming her hands, eyes fixed on the street outside. Bravo sat alert by the front door, ears twitching at every sound. She couldn't shake the feeling something was off. Her phone lit up with a new message. "Unknown. They're digging. Check your perimeter." She didn't recognize the number, but the message. It was specific, personal, and definitely not a prank. Her training kicked in. She set the mug down slowly and stepped toward the door. "Bravo, perimeter." Without hesitation, the shepherd slipped through the dog door and began a silent sweep around the house. Jada moved to the hallway closet and unlocked a black duffel bag hidden behind winter coats. Inside, her old service pistol, now registered for civilian use. She didn't want to need it, but want had nothing to do with reality. Moments later, Bravo returned and sat beside her, tail still, eyes alert. That meant one thing. He saw something. "What is it, boy?" A knock rattled the front door. Sharp, unfriendly. Jada peeked through the peephole. Two men, not in uniform, but the way they stood, legs spread, hands on belts, reeked of law enforcement. She opened the door a crack. "Miss Monroe?" one of them asked. He was tall, white, with sandy hair and a smug expression that looked carved into his face. "I'm Detective Alan Graves. This is Detective Brian Cho. We're following up on a call about suspicious activity in the area." "What kind of activity?" she asked evenly. "Neighbor said someone was training an aggressive dog late at night, thought maybe it was being prepped for illegal fights." Jada stared at them, unreadable. "You're kidding." "Mind if we come in and take a look around?" Graves asked, already moving toward the threshold. Jada stepped in his way. "Actually, I do mind. Do you have a warrant?" His smile faltered. "This is just a courtesy call, ma'am. And I'm extending you the courtesy of the Fourth Amendment. No warrant, no entry." Cho shifted uncomfortably. "We don't want any trouble." "Then walk away," she said. Graves's smile returned, tighter this time. "We'll be back." "I'll be here." As they left, she caught the quick glance Graves shot at the black truck parked down the block. Unmarked, tinted windows. She memorized the plates. Jada closed the door and leaned back against it. Her instincts weren't wrong. This wasn't random harassment. This was coordinated. That night, she drove an hour north to visit someone she hadn't seen in years. Harold Pickens, her former canine operations chief, now retired and half-drunk behind the bar he owned in a dusty town with no streetlights. He blinked when she walked in. "Well, hell," he muttered, "the ghost returns." "I need intel," she said, sliding into a stool. "Someone's poking around. Slater and Monroe ran into me last night, then two plainclothes showed up this morning, fishing for excuses." Harold raised an eyebrow. "You stir up something?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think someone already knows who I am." He poured her a drink. You think this is about your old clearance? Maybe, or maybe it's about Bravo. Harold leaned in. They trying to get to you through him. They're looking for a weakness, she said. They just don't realize he's not one. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded toward the back office. I'll pull some old favors. See if anything's circling your name. Thanks, she said softly. As she stood to leave, he grabbed her arm gently. Be careful, Jada. You've got a target on your back. This ain't Iraq. These folks fight dirtier. She nodded once. Good thing I know how to fight. By the time she got home, a patrol car was parked half a block away. Just watching. Jada didn't bother confronting it. She knew the game. They wanted her to react, get flustered, lose control. But she'd played too many real wars to be baited by amateurs. Instead, she sat on her porch, Bravo by her side, sipping a fresh cup of coffee under the darkening sky. She waited, silent, steady. At 2:00 a.m., she heard the quiet jingle of a chain-link gate opening. Bravo perked up immediately. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the flashlight, clipped on Bravo's tactical collar, and whispered, "Search." The dog bolted across the yard, silent like smoke. A muffled yelp rang out a second later. Jada sprinted toward the sound. There, pinned against the side fence, was a man in black. No badge, no ID, just a radio clipped to his shoulder and a taser still holstered. Bravo stood motionless, teeth inches from his throat. "Get him off me!" the man yelled. "Not until I know who sent you." "I was told to plant a bag, that's it." "A bag of what?" "Drugs," he choked. "They said she was a suspect, just following orders." Jada's eyes burned cold. "You tell your boss they sent the wrong woman." She called 911, not the local precinct. No, she used a line she hadn't dialed in years. Military Police Liaison, Federal Branch. When they answered, she said 3 words. Echo Tango Bravo. There was a pause on the other end, then a new voice. "Lieutenant Monroe?" "I need extraction protocol, and I need it now." Back in the yard, the fake intruder sobbed. But Jada, she didn't flinch, because whatever this was, it had just gone national, and she was ready. The sun hadn't even risen when Jada Monroe packed her duffel and slipped on her boots. Bravo paced beside her, sensing the shift in energy. She moved fast but methodically, securing the house and switching on the remote surveillance Harold helped her upgrade last year. Whatever came next, she needed control and clarity. As she drove out of town, Jada's thoughts ran ahead of her. Someone had tried to frame her. That much was clear. But the bigger question loomed. Why? She didn't stop until she reached a decommissioned airfield just outside Fort Dalton, a place forgotten by most but still used for training by select veterans. It was there she met up with Mia Corbin, a cybersecurity expert and former military intel officer. Mia was short, sharp, and saw through everything, including Jada's calm. "Been a minute," Mia said, arms crossed, standing beside her van full of black monitors and antennae. Jada gave her a nod. "Wish it was just a social call. I'm guessing this has to do with the local cops and your dog being framed as Cujo?" Jada pulled out the burner phone and handed it to her. "Start here." Mia popped the SIM into her terminal. "Encrypted text from an unlisted federal tag. That's not local. Someone's poking around the old files. Can you track it?" "Already on it, but Jada, this isn't small stuff. Whoever accessed this has pull. Deep state level clearance." Jada's stomach twisted. "They're not just coming after me. They're laying a foundation." Mia turned to her. "So what's the plan?" Jada looked out across the cracked runway. "I'm not hiding. I'm drawing them in." That night, Jada posted a video on a private veteran forum. It was coded, referencing an old mission, and included a time and location. Downtown Franklin, 3 p.m. Public Plaza. It was a signal. To her allies, to her enemies, and to anyone still watching. At 3 p.m. sharp the next day, Jada stood in the center of the plaza in full civilian attire, jeans, boots, and a fitted leather jacket. Bravo sat calmly at her heel, wearing his service vest. Around them, the square buzzed with people, mothers with strollers, teens on skateboards, workers grabbing late lunches. Across the street, a white Crown Vic idled. Inside were Graves and Cho. "She's baiting us," Graves growled. Cho checked the mirror. "Or she's exposing us." "Doesn't matter, we finish what we started." They stepped out and approached slowly. Jada didn't flinch. She locked eyes with them as they closed in. "We got a report about an aggressive dog in this area," Graves said loudly, glancing around so the crowd would hear. Jada's voice cut through the air, calm and resonant. "I'm a veteran. This is a certified military service dog. His name is Bravo, and he's saved more lives than both of you combined." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cho tried to keep the tone controlled. "We'd like you to come with us for questioning." "Without cause, without a warrant, in front of these people?" She gestured around. "You're really this sloppy?" Graves took a step forward, and that was his mistake. Bravo stood, muscles tense, controlled. The moment was electric. Then, suddenly, phones were out. People started recording. Graves paused. Jada's voice dropped. "You want to arrest me? Do it. But you better pray you've got probable cause and backup that isn't crooked." Cho leaned in, whispering, "You think a dog's going to save you?" She whispered back, "No, but the footage will bury you." Graves's jaw clenched. "You think you're protected? This town eats people like you." "I'm not from this town," Jada said, her voice ice. "And I'm not the one who should be afraid." At that moment, a familiar voice rang out from behind. "Is there a problem here?" It was Captain Renee Howard, one of Jada's oldest allies from the Army, now working as a federal investigator. She wore plain clothes, but her badge flashed briefly as she approached. Graves' bravado evaporated. Renee turned to him, expression cold. "You two are interfering with a protected federal asset under observation. Step away." "What asset?" Graves blurted. "She's standing right in front of you." The crowd fell into stunned silence. Renee stepped between them. "Miss Monroe, would you please accompany me? We've got urgent business to discuss." Jada nodded, never breaking eye contact with the two detectives. "Gladly." As she and Renee walked away, Cho grabbed Graves's arm. "We need to back off," he hissed. "This is out of our league." Graves shook his head, face twisted. "No. She made me look weak. She just made you look exposed," Cho snapped. Back in Renee's car, Jada let out the breath she'd been holding. Renee glanced over. "You always had a flair for dramatic timing. I figured I'd smoke out whoever was watching. Didn't think it'd go that public." "Oh, it's public now," Renee said. "And you've made some people very nervous." Jada turned her head toward the window. "Good. Let them squirm. Because this wasn't about one corrupt precinct anymore. This was systemic. And Jada Monroe was just getting started." Jada sat across from Renee in a quiet, windowless office inside a nondescript federal building in Richmond. The walls were bare, and the only sound was the soft hum of the ventilation. Bravo lay calmly at her feet, but his ears twitched at every shift in movement outside the door. He was alert, just like her. "I pulled your service record again," Renee said, placing a thick folder on the table. "Not just for nostalgia." Jada raised an eyebrow. "Looking for dirt?" "No, looking for what someone else might be after." Renee opened the folder to a page with a redacted mission log. "Operation Mercury, Afghanistan. Classified until 2 months ago. Suddenly, someone's been poking around in these files. Not just yours. All the operatives on that mission. Jada leaned forward. That mission was sealed, buried so deep even the army stopped mentioning it. Exactly, which is why it's raising flags now. Someone wants to erase it or rewrite it. Jada's face darkened. And if I'm the last person who can tell the real story, they're coming for you. Silence settled between them. Renee closed the file. You think Graves and Cho are tied to this? They're small fish, Jada replied, but someone gave them a reason to target me. Renee hesitated. We've traced 2 financial deposits to Graves, offshore. No clear source, but the timing matches your first encounter. So they're being paid to harass me, or worse. Jada stood and paced the room. Someone's building a narrative. They want me to snap, get violent, use Bravo. Then they can discredit me. Why not just take you out quietly? Jada paused. Because this isn't just about removing me. It's about making an example out of me. Renee's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up, concerned. You need to see this. She turned the phone around. A local news site had a grainy photo of Jada from the plaza confrontation, the headline blaring, Aggressive ex-military woman confronts police in public showdown. Below, an anonymous quote from an unnamed source claimed Jada had a history of mental instability and violence during service. None of it was true. Jada's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak for several seconds. They're trying to make me look unstable. They're trying to control the narrative, Renee said, but we still have time to take it back. Jada sat again, eyes sharp. Then we move fast. I need everything you can dig up on who's funding Graves and Cho. Follow the money. Renee nodded. Already started. But there's something else. She pulled out a printed photo, an overhead shot of a building near Franklin's downtown district. It was a warehouse, seemingly abandoned. This came from satellite footage. 3 weeks ago, this place was empty. Last night, vans pulled in. Military-grade equipment offloaded. No records, no permits. Jada stared at the image. Her instincts told her everything she needed to know. They're setting up a black site. Likely off books. Maybe even private contractors. Jada's jaw clenched. We've seen this before. This is how people disappear. Renee leaned in. You still want to go public? Jada's eyes burned, now more than ever. That evening, Jada stood alone in her cabin, the weight of it all pressing down on her shoulders. Bravo rested near the fireplace, watching her. The flickering flames danced in her eyes. She picked up a photo from the mantel, her old unit, before everything went sideways, before she was the last one left. Her thumb brushed over a familiar face. You'd have told me to walk away, she whispered, but I'm not running anymore. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. Bravo shot up, teeth bared. Lights flared through the windows. Vehicles. At least 3. Jada dropped the photo, grabbed the duffel, and crouched beside Bravo. Through the blinds, she caught sight of figures, tactical gear, black vests. Not local cops. She didn't wait. She triggered the hidden switch near the fireplace, revealing a hatch beneath the rug. With a snap of her fingers, Bravo dropped into silent motion. They slipped into the crawl space, the hatch sealing above them just as the front door burst open. Boots stomped through the cabin, voices barked commands. One man shouted, "Clear right!" Another, "No sign of the dog or the target." A third cursed, "She's gone." Jada moved silently through the underground path, her heart hammering, but her mind razor-sharp. She emerged 2 blocks away behind an old shed. The night was cool, the sky cloudless. Bravo nudged her knee gently, his eyes calm. She crouched beside him. They're not playing games anymore. She pulled out her phone and dialed Mia. I need you to go dark, she said. You okay? Mia's voice came through, tense. No, but I will be. I need access to the warehouse in that photo. Tonight. You're gonna break in? I'm gonna find out who's pulling the strings. Jada hung up and looked at Bravo. Let's turn the tables. The warehouse loomed like a rusted steel carcass against the moonlit skyline of Franklin. It was supposed to be abandoned, shuttered for over a decade, but now it buzzed with a tension Jada could feel even from across the street. A drone of generators echoed faintly through the air. Surveillance cameras, barely visible, had been installed on the corners of the roof, and a single guard paced the south entrance with a rifle slung casually over his shoulder. Jada crouched behind a row of dumpsters across the road, dressed in all black tactical gear, her face painted in subtle camouflage. Bravo lay silently beside her, his breathing controlled, eyes locked on the guard like a predator waiting for permission. "Ready?" she whispered. Bravo gave a quiet growl that was more answer than question. She checked her earpiece. "Mia, status?" Mia's voice crackled in. "Looping the exterior feeds now. You have 5 minutes before they reset." "Copy that?" Jada signaled Bravo and dashed across the street, slipping through the shadows. She reached the chain-link fence, clipped it open at the base where she'd cut it hours earlier, and rolled under. Bravo followed with ease. They skirted around the corner of the warehouse, stopping at a service door on the west side. "Cameras blind now," Mia confirmed. Jada picked the lock, slipped inside, and immediately felt the shift in air. Cool, recycled, humming with machinery. The interior of the warehouse had been gutted and rebuilt into something cold and sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, soundproof rooms with reinforced doors. She moved swiftly, checking corners, glancing through half-open doors. Inside one room, she saw a map of Virginia with red markers. Photos pinned beside them. Names. One of them was hers. The others were faces she recognized. Activists, whistleblowers, former military. "They're tracking people," she muttered. She pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures. Suddenly, a voice behind her. "You're not supposed to be here." Jada spun, gun drawn, but froze when she saw the figure. Sergeant Thomas Graves. Except now he was in private tactical gear, a logo stitched onto his vest. Hollow Ridge Security. Jada's eyes narrowed. Private contractor, no jurisdiction. Graves smirked. "Doesn't mean I can't clean up a mess." Bravo let out a low growl and stepped forward, positioning himself between Jada and Graves. Graves's hand hovered near his weapon. "I wouldn't." But Jada didn't flinch. "What is this place? Who's paying you?" Graves shrugged. "Patriot work. We keep the country clean. People like you. You make it dirty." She stepped closer. "You're running black sites on American soil, targeting citizens." Graves leaned in, voice low. "You were a ghost, a problem we couldn't trace, until you stepped back into the light. Now we have everything we need." Suddenly he raised his hand, and the room erupted. Men poured in from every door. 6, 7, armed. Jada dropped smoke from her belt and kicked it forward. The room filled with haze. She dove right. Bravo leapt left. Gunfire cracked through the fog. She hit the floor and rolled behind a server rack. "Bravo!" she called. From the smoke came a scream, then a crash. Jada dashed forward, disarmed one man with a swift elbow to the jaw, grabbed his weapon mid-air, and knocked him cold with the stock. More shadows emerged. Bravo took another down at the knee, sending the man sprawling. Jada moved like a storm, precise, relentless. She fought without hesitation, her training rising to the surface like muscle memory. Within 2 minutes, the room was silent. Bodies groaned on the floor. Smoke still lingered in the air. Graves lay against a wall, blood trailing from a cut above his brow. Bravo stood over him, low growl reverberating in the silence. Jada stepped over and crouched beside him. "Who hired you?" He spat. "You think I'd tell you anything?" She pressed her foot on his shoulder wound, just enough pressure to draw a hiss. "You're already going down, Graves. You can help yourself, or go down alone." He laughed, bitter. "You think you're winning? You're just a headline waiting to happen." She leaned closer. "Not this time." Suddenly, Graves's eyes darted behind her. Jada whipped around, too late. A man in a suit stood at the door. Tall, calm. Not military, not police. "Agent Monroe," the man said, flashing a federal badge. "FBI." Jada straightened. "Took you long enough. We've been watching this operation for a while. We needed proof. We got it tonight." He looked at Bravo and gave a small nod. "Nice work." Graves groaned. "You used her?" Monroe's eyes sharpened. "No, we protected her cover while she did what none of us could." Jada crossed her arms. "So what now?" Monroe's voice was steady. "Now we shut this down. Every room, every name, every account. And Graves, he gets to be the face of it." Outside, sirens began to wail. Unmarked black vehicles rolled in. Jada looked to Bravo, who sat calmly, ears twitching at the sound. Monroe turned to her again. "You could have walked away." She met his eyes. "I've walked away from too many fights. Not this one." He nodded. "You're clear to go. We'll handle the rest." As Jada walked out of the warehouse, the night air hit her like a breath of freedom. Mia was already waiting at the end of the block, engine running. Jada opened the door, Bravo jumped in, and she followed. Mia glanced at her in the rear view. "You all right?" Jada exhaled. "Getting there." As they drove off, the warehouse faded behind them, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. The tension in Jada's chest didn't ease even as they crossed state lines. The warehouse had been a win, but not the end. From the passenger seat, Bravo sat alert, his dark eyes scanning the passing terrain. Jada stared out the window, watching farmland roll by under the golden wash of morning. Her fingers tapped restlessly on her thigh. Mia, driving with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping a fresh coffee, finally broke the silence. "We should disappear for a while. Lay low. Let the feds handle it now." Jada didn't respond. "I'm serious," Mia said. "You did your part, more than your part." Jada turned toward her. "I know what I saw, Mia. That list in the warehouse. It wasn't just targets. It was people being moved, relocated, disappeared." Mia tightened her grip on the wheel. "And you think they're still out there?" "I don't think. I know." They rode in silence again, the hum of the highway a background drumbeat to the weight hanging between them. Jada pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over a contact. Colonel Nathaniel Brooks, retired. Once her superior officer, the one man who had trained her in covert ops and survival tactics, and the only person she trusted outside of Mia. She dialed. It rang twice before his gravelly voice came through. "Didn't think I'd be hearing from you, Sergeant Lawson." "I need eyes, sir, on a facility. I think it's still active. Locations outside Huntsville, Alabama. You know it? Old Army Depot? Not anymore. It's off book now. Probably funded through black budgets or shell orgs. Can you help?" A pause. "I can do more than that. I've got a team nearby, people I trust." "I need confirmation. Are they holding civilians?" "I'll find out." She exhaled. "Thank you." "Jada." "Sir?" "Whatever you're walking into, make sure you're the one walking out." She hung up. Mia glanced over. "So we're going to Alabama?" "Looks like it." Mia laughed dryly. "Figures." They drove another 6 hours, stopping only once for gas and supplies. Jada changed into inconspicuous clothes, jeans, hoodie, worn sneakers. She looked like anyone and no one. When they finally arrived on the outskirts of Huntsville, Brooks was waiting at an old airfield. He stood tall despite his age, a retired warhorse dressed in civilian flannel and jeans, but his presence commanded respect. He didn't greet her with a smile. Facilities real, heavily guarded. Thermal shows movement underground, and there's more. Jada raised an eyebrow. They've got dogs. Mia blinked. Dogs? Military-grade canines, trained to hunt and disable. They're not pets. They're weapons. Jada's jaw clenched. Bravo can handle himself. Brooks leaned down and scratched Bravo behind the ears. I don't doubt that, but they'll come in waves. You'll need an exit plan. He handed her a folded map. Service tunnel, east side. You'll have 5 minutes max before they lock it down. She nodded. Let's move. Nightfall came quickly. Jada and Bravo approached the compound through tall grass, staying low. A fence circled the perimeter, electrified. Motion sensors dotted the area. She disabled one with a flick of her multi-tool and slipped through a blind spot. The compound itself looked like an abandoned warehouse from the outside, but inside was a different world. Metal corridors, lab-like rooms, armed men moving with practiced formation. She found the cells on the lower level, thick glass and steel bars. Inside were 5 civilians, all restrained. One woman had bruises on her face. Another man sat motionless, eyes wide with fear. Jada moved quickly, disabling the lock with a code Brooks had given her. You're safe now, she said. Follow my lead. But just as she turned, alarms blared. They know we're here, Mia's voice came through the comm. Jada swore under her breath. Bravo, cover the rear. The dog bolted down the corridor, teeth bared, ready. Men in tactical gear stormed in from both sides. Jada fired first. The hallway lit with muzzle flashes. She hit 2 guards in quick succession, ducked behind a pillar, and called back, "Keep moving!" The civilians ran, Bravo circling to herd them toward the exit. But then came the bark. Deep, sharp. Artificial, out of the shadows, a monstrous canine emerged, black armor plating, glowing red eyes, foam at the mouth. It launched at Bravo. The clash was violent. Jada couldn't get a clean shot without risking her dog. She ran forward and kicked the other dog's side, throwing it off balance. Bravo recovered, leapt on its back, and sank his teeth into the weak joint at its neck. The synthetic beast yelped and collapsed. Jada looked down at Bravo, panting, bloodied but standing. "Good boy," she whispered. Behind her, more guards came. Then Brooks appeared at the end of the hall with 2 more operatives. "Time to go!" They moved fast, ushering the civilians through the tunnel. Jada was the last to leave, firing behind them until they were out. The tunnel opened up to a backfield, helicopters in the distance. They were safe. For now. Brooks turned to her. "You've done enough." But Jada shook her head. "It's not about me. It's about the next facility, the next list, the next target." He looked at her with a mix of pride and worry. "You're not going to stop, are you?" She smiled faintly. "Would you?" He didn't answer. Above them, the first helicopter descended. FBI insignia on the side. Jada turned to Bravo, who leaned into her hand, his breathing finally slowing. This wasn't over. And that's exactly why she'd keep going. The makeshift FBI safe house in Birmingham was a converted firehouse, brick exterior, thick steel doors, and surveillance feeds humming on every monitor inside. Jada stood at the center of the operations room, arms crossed, eyes scanning the layout of the facility they had just escaped. Bravo lay at her feet, bruised but alert, ears flicking every time the door clicked. Across from her, Agent Cheryl Monroe clicked through satellite images. Her sharp eyes darted between screens as she spoke. Everything checks out. The facility you breached, it was off-grid. No official funding, no military assignment. It's a ghost. Jada narrowed her eyes. Then who owns the ghost? Cheryl turned. Private security shell, HQ in D.C., but the money traces back to two names, Chief Michael Torrance and Sheriff Dale Mercer. Mia let out a low whistle from across the room. That's the sheriff who tried to corner Jada in that diner. Cheryl nodded. They've been running black-site intentions disguised as rural law enforcement operations, the kind that never make it to court. They target civilians under vague pretenses, move them out of state, hold them indefinitely, and no one knows. Jada's face tightened. Then we expose them. We go public. Not yet, Cheryl warned. If we leak before the warrants are secure, they'll vanish everything. We need proof. Proof? Jada asked. We walked through it. I mean admissible proof, chain of custody, body cams, signed documents, testimonies. A silence settled over the room. Then Mia leaned in. What if we get one of them to confess? Jada's eyes snapped toward her. You mean bait them? Mia grinned. You've got the dog, you've got the story, and Torrance is cocky. He won't resist if he thinks he has the upper hand. Cheryl raised a brow. You'd put yourself in the line of fire again. Jada looked down at Bravo. He looked back as if reading her. Let's corner them this time. The plan came together fast. That night, Jada posted a video on a burner account, grainy footage of the facility's hallway, blurred faces, and her voice narrating. To the officers who think they're above the law, this dog remembers you, and so do I. The video exploded within hours. By morning, Torrance had issued a press statement denying involvement. That same afternoon, Jada received a DM from an anonymous account. A location, a time, and 5 words. We need to talk. Alone. It was a trap, of course it was. But that's what they were counting on. The meeting point was an abandoned train yard outside Montgomery. Jada wore a wire, her vest concealed beneath a denim jacket. Mia and Cheryl waited in a surveillance van half a mile out, sniper support on standby. Bravo walked beside her, leash loose but his movements precise. They waited. At 3:07 p.m., 2 SUVs pulled up. Torrance stepped out first, tan uniform crisp, white hair slicked back, the smugness in his smile unmistakable. Mercer followed, bulkier, twitchier, his right hand never straying far from his belt. Well, if it isn't the little soldier and her mutt, Torrance sneered. Glad you came, Jada said calmly. Torrance walked forward. You've been busy. Hacking into secure facilities, breaking into protected zones. You're a criminal now. I'm a witness, she corrected. And a survivor. He smirked. No one's gonna believe you. Black woman, military background, PTSD in your file. Every word you say is being recorded, she interrupted. Torrance froze. Then, behind him, Mercer drew his gun. Jada didn't flinch. Bravo, she whispered. In a flash, the dog lunged, not at Mercer, but at his wrist. The gun dropped. Mercer screamed as his knees hit the gravel. Torrance reached for his own weapon, but found himself staring down the barrel of Cheryl's sidearm. She had approached silently from behind, Mia flanking her. You're under arrest, Cheryl said coldly. For what? Torrance hissed. Cheryl handed him a document. Illegal detainment, conspiracy, abuse of authority, and obstruction of justice. Mercer, groaning on the ground, spat out blood. You got no proof, Cheryl raised a brow. Actually, we do. Meet our newest whistleblower. From the shadows, a young man stepped out, Deputy Carlos Neely, early 20s, pale, nervous but determined. He had worked under Mercer's command and seen too much. "You told me we were detaining suspects. You said it was for national security," Carlos said. "You were part of it," Torrance barked. "I believed you, until I saw what you did to those people." Cheryl nodded toward the van. "He's recorded everything, and with your confession today, the case is sealed." Torrance's face dropped. Bravo growled low. Jada stepped closer, eyes locked on the man who once tried to break her spirit. "You thought I was alone. You thought being black, being a woman, made me weak. But I'm a soldier. I never come unarmed. And this dog? He doesn't forget faces." Torrance and Mercer were loaded into the van, cuffed, humiliated. As the sun began to set, Jada stood on the edge of the tracks, watching the scene with quiet resolve. Mia approached, hands in her pockets. "Think it'll stick? With the video, the whistleblower, and federal backup? It has to." "But what if it doesn't?" Jada looked down down at Bravo, then back at Mia. "Then we go again." The courtroom was packed, not with reporters or spectators, but with silence. A silence that had weight, that buzzed with anticipation, that curled around the polished benches and echoed through the vaulted ceiling, like the calm before a thunderstorm. Jada stood at the witness stand, dressed in a sleek charcoal blazer, the only splash of color being the golden pendant around her neck, an old military tag repurposed into a reminder. Bravo lay at her feet in perfect stillness, eyes fixed on the gallery, tail flicking slightly like a silent metronome of tension. Across the aisle, Chief Torrance and Sheriff Mercer sat at the defense table, their expressions hard, jaws locked, their crisp suits doing little to hide the panic behind their eyes. They were no longer smug, no longer untouchable. They looked smaller now, shrunken under the fluorescent courtroom lights. Federal Prosecutor Clarice Benton, cool and razor-sharp, stood before the judge, her voice steady as she presented the final damning piece of evidence, a full video confession from Deputy Carlos Neely. "Your Honor, the accused orchestrated an unauthorized network of off-the-record detainments, falsified charges, and leveraged local law enforcement to violate civil rights on a systemic scale. Their primary targets? Civilians of color." There was a murmur in the gallery, no outbursts, just a chilling acknowledgement that what had once been whispered rumors had been dragged fully into the light. The judge turned toward Jada. "Ms. Whitaker, do you wish to make a final statement?" She stood slowly, her eyes sweeping the room. "Yes, Your Honor." She cleared her throat and began. "I spent 13 years serving my country. I've seen combat. I've survived bombings, ambushes, the kind of horrors no one should ever have to live through. But nothing prepared me for the war I came home to." She gestured toward the defense table. This wasn't just about one traffic stop or one false arrest. It was about power. The belief that someone like me, a black woman, could be silenced, erased, disappeared without anyone asking questions. Her voice grew firmer. "I didn't come forward because I wanted revenge. I came forward because I couldn't sleep knowing someone else might walk into that diner, get cornered by men with badges, and never walk back out." She looked down at Bravo. "This dog saved my life more than once, in Afghanistan and back home. But it wasn't just his training, it was his instinct. He could sense when someone meant harm, and when I walked into that sheriff's station, he knew." She looked back at the judge. "This isn't just about justice for me. It's about the system, because if people in power can abuse it and walk away, then none of us are safe." She stepped back. Silence. Then the judge nodded, face unreadable. "I've heard enough." 30 minutes later, the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Torrance slumped in his chair, white as a sheet. Mercer stared blankly as if he'd been gutted from the inside. They were escorted out in handcuffs, once men who operated in shadows, now exposed under the harshest light of all, accountability. As the courtroom emptied, Mia came to Jada's side. "You did it." "No," Jada said, brushing a hand along Bravo's back. "We did." Outside, the press was waiting. Microphones swarmed. Flashbulbs flared. "Ms. Whitaker, how do you feel? What's next for you? Do you plan to sue the department?" Jada raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "I'm not here to celebrate. I'm here to demand change. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a deeper sickness, one we all need to face." She looked into the cameras. "If you've ever felt powerless, unheard, afraid to speak up, this story is for you. Not because I wore a uniform, not because I had a military dog, but because I chose not to stay silent." She paused, voice steady. "We can't all be soldiers, but we can all be brave." That night, her story made headlines across the country. Not for the drama, not for the takedown, but for the courage. Online, people shared their own stories of injustice. Hashtags trended. Petitions launched. Departments began internal reviews. One case had cracked open a wider conversation. And Bravo? He became a symbol of loyalty, of resistance, of justice served not with vengeance, but with clarity and truth. As the screen fades to black, Jada's voice echoes one last time. "Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it growls before it bites." If this story moved you, if it made you think, feel, or even just pause, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes the stories we tell are the ones that spark change.